Welcome to Six of One and Bill of the Other, where today we are discussing the latest, greatest, and final, maybe, film by Francis Ford Coppola. Bill, tell me about Megalopolis. No, you said you had some spiel. You said you had a Rotten Tomatoes-esque little piece to say to the people at home that would just get me to my core.
Yeah. So you know how when you go to Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic, they usually have a blurb from reviewers. Like if you go to a famous reviewer, they're like, Megalopolis, more like Megaflopolis, and it's really stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I was like, what would my blurb be if I was a professional reviewer? And so here, for the first time live, is my blurb for Megalopolis. Watching Megalopolis is like farting in the bathtub. You giggle a little bit at first, but then you're revolted by how bad it stinks. That was my...
thank you very much, and good night.
First of all, there's been a problem with the rights for the film. So in the United States, it's pretty much impossible to stream or purchase this movie. I tried to buy it. I would have, bought the DVD or the Blu-ray. It's not available anywhere. And then you finally do get to watch it. And I remember back in the 2000s, Kid A was coming out after Radiohead released OK Computer, and it was on like Napster or whatever, the file sharing programs. And you'd download it and you'd go, oh, no, that's not Radiohead. That's just some group that did like an instrumental. And even though I knew Adam Driver was in it when I was watching the movie, I kept going, is this really the movie? Like, is this a fake one that someone put together? But no, it's the real film.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to talk about it. Obviously, it's a strange one because I think in the 70s, when you go from The Godfather to The Conversation to The Godfather Part 2 to Apocalypse Now, it's almost like there is a case to be had for Francis Ford Coppola being like, perhaps just for a moment in time, the greatest director of all time, maybe.
Yeah.
Or greatest like filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so I think like a little bit of research shows that he sort of had this idea around the time of Apocalypse Now, and he's been working on it and for decades. And then he got a vinery, a wine. He became a wine producer. And I would, before we go into this too much, I would suggest that he probably should have just stuck with the wine. Should have stuck with the wine. Well, for disclosure, just before we go for disclosure, I have now watched Megalopolis 3 times, and anyone who's watched it once, you'll either have sympathy for me, or you'll have sympathy for me. What were you going to say, Bill?
I went back in time and relived the actual Catalinarian conspiracy just so I could understand.
You did a little bit as well, yeah. It's strange.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One of the strange things about this film is a lot of the things you read about the production, that he fired the visual effects team and how they were writing scenes every day, like on set. So, they would arrive to set, they would go and they would build a set and they'd go to that set and they'd be waiting. And then he'd come out and go, no, go to this set because we just wrote something. And it sounds crazy. You go, oh, I can see why the film turned out the way it did. But then if you've ever watched Heart of Darkness, which is the documentary about Apocalypse Now, which, by the way, my favorite movie ever by anybody, he was doing the same thing on Apocalypse Now. And yet it turned out so differently. And I think there's a little luck to that. How it comes together, but I know Mario Puzo, I think that's right, wrote The Godfather. Puzo wrote the Godfather scripts, and I can't remember, there was somebody else who wrote the majority of the Apocalypse Now script, and then he sort of wrote over top of it. As far as when I looked up, it seems like he wrote this himself, Megalopolis, and it suffers a lot of overthinking, and I think it's a hard film to get into because there's just so much. It's what topic do you want to start? Do you want to start with the dialogue, the acting,
So I was going to say, right, I wanted to go into like the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I thought that would be quite a nice little thing to do. Just a moment ago, while I was watching it for the third time, the good points, the bad points, and the ugly points, right? But in something you just said there was quite interesting. The idea that I saw that before we go into it too much, I saw that a lot of it was like improvised. They would improvise on the set.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it in a minute, but just say someone improvised just to test the mics, just to test the cameras. They started to do, say, a Shakespearean speech, and they did it. And then Francis Ford Coppola would go, yes, we'll have that. And then they went, hang on a minute, what, you can't just do that. And he went, no, it's just perfect, right? And then another thing, Francis Ford Coppola, right? We shouldn't be ageist here, but he's an old guy now, isn't he? He's in his 80s,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think that comes across a little bit. Look, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Well, how about I bring up some points, right? I want to start with the ugly. Right.
Okay.
I'm going to do the ugly. Right. Just for instance, right. I wrote two pages of notes. Right. You can see that 2 pages of notes, and I've tried to condense them into the ugly, the good, and the bad. All right.
Okay.
So
that famous movie, The Ugly, the Good, and the Bad.
The Ugly, the Good, and the Bad, and that's where I would have gone wrong, because I would have insisted it was called The Ugly, the Good, and the Bad. No one would have ever heard of it. The Ugly, Megalopolis.
Oh, wow.
After watching it 3 times, Megalopolis, right?
Okay.
I've got some unnecessary plot devices, right? I've got 3 main points. Point number 1, Bill. This is what I want to talk about first.
Okay.
The ability, right? And it might seem a little bit out of order, but we'll go through these points. Maybe we'll talk about the plot. We'll go through these points, right? The ability to stop time, right? That is potentially, you center a film around that, and it's quite a big deal. Right, Bill, explain. Right, I've watched it 3 times. I kind of the plot. The first time I watched it, I didn't like it. The second time I watched it, I thought, oh, maybe it's quite good. The third time I watched it, I hated it. Right, the ability to stop time, that was wasted. I don't understand what it was even doing in the film at all.
Remember, he stopped that bullet after it went into his skull. Remember? I think, and again, this is all conjecture. It seemed to me like an artistic statement on being an artist and being able to stop time in order to see complex problems and solve them. I think it was a little on the nose with him saying "time stop" every time. But I thought that was more his way of showing the mind of the artist, which is a point I don't know if you have with the bad. Do you have how he is a character in this movie, Francis Ford Coppola? Is that one of them?
Oh, well, hold on to that thought then.
Okay.
Because, and something you've just said touches upon my good, right? So we have got similar feelings about the time thing. I didn't really, overall, I thought it was wasted. Number 2, when it comes to, and this happened throughout, right? Unnecessary plot points, unnecessary plot devices, wasting the audience's time, right? Now, there's a moment in the film, I'm going to be specific here, but I'm being specific to show the problems that I thought were throughout. There's a point where there's this girl called Vesta, right? And she's like, she's a kind of a teenage pop idol.
Yeah.
And her virginity is celebrated. And then during a kind of a show, the world gets to see that our main character, Adam Driver, Caesar, Catalina, has had sex with this virginal thing who's auctioning her virginity off, right? And
which that turns out to be a ruse, yeah.
Right, and this is my problem with it, right? So we go through a point where one of the main characters goes and finds the original birth certificate and determines that this girl is actually 23 years old, therefore dispelling that whole thing. She's not underage. That's that. Because she's like a teenage, like kind of underage pop star. And then we go through another point where they prove it's also a deep fake. So they double dismiss the filmed main character in bed with the Vesta character. And I sat there and it wasted my time 3 times in a row. Either just go with one or the other. Either you prove that she's not underage, or you prove it's deep fake.
I found this scene
crazy,
deeply uncomfortable, and we can go into a little later how I think, and this is just my view of it, that Francis may have been thinking about himself with Adam Driver's character of Caesar, and there have been some charges even on this film of Francis Ford Coppola allegedly groping and kissing women before the club scene. And then there was another one that you can look up. I don't want to get into detail because it's kind of sickening. It's the dude that did the Goosebumps movies, I think. I could be wrong, but he had some very sick allegations, and apparently Francis Ford Coppola helped his legal defense. And so with that in mind, all allegedly, to have a plot in a movie where it seems like you're the main character, where there are improper sexual allegations against a minor, and you're going, look, it's all fake. I kind of, and I wouldn't have even brought it up in this review, but he brought it up in this movie, and it made me feel a little sick.
And he double
plot.
disproved it. So I didn't right. So you're saying it like it was,
which
obvious.
When you're telling the truth is always a good way to. You always have to prove it. No, I'm saying that like facetiously. Like what I'm saying is, if I didn't do something, I'm not going to go. Not only did I didn't do it, but I also hate eating that. I don't know. Cut that.
No, you're. No, it's not. No, I like it because what you picked up on there, which in pages and pages of notes here, I didn't really nail down like you just did. The idea that Adam Driver sees a Catalina is a kind of representation on camera of the director himself. Well, and therefore he's throwing situations that he's been accused of. Or even just like you said, the ability to want to, he's getting on a bit. He would love to stop time.
Well, and this is my speculation. There's a director that Red Letter Media goes over in their Best of the Worst, and he's called Neil Breen. And what Neil Breen does is he makes these low budget films that are actually like expensive for normal people, but low budget for Hollywood standards. And in the movie, he's the writer, he's the director, he's the star. He is the greatest genius who ever lived. He's the greatest hacker in the world. He is also a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL, and he's trying to stop the bad guy, but it's tough because women are constantly throwing themselves at him. And we're basically watching a Philosopher King movie where it's like, who can save us? Only the really smart artistic guy. And if you notice, like, women are just throwing. There's not one woman in this film that does not throw themselves at Adam Driver's feet, and it seems like it seems unearned a lot. And so like the scene.
We'll talk about his character and because unearned, the adoration of the women is unearned.
Well, sure. And, you know, you talked about the Shakespeare being ad-libbed. I think he put that in there on purpose. And it's really odd. So it's like there's this scene towards the beginning where they're all meeting. The mayor is there, and he shows up, and he starts quoting from Hamlet. Like, he shows up, and everyone's like, oh, look, it's and he's like, to be or not to be.
He does the whole to be or not to be speech.
Yeah, if you just said to be or not to be to your friends, everyone would be like, why is he being an asshole? But if you quoted the whole speech, most people, and I've watched Shakespeare movies, but most people also aren't really flowing with a whole Shakespearean unexpected speech. But it sort of struck me as a person who is... a person who isn't great socially, and maybe people don't like them, and they imagine what it would be like to really show them. So, like, in your head, you go in, and the bully's like, ha-ha, there's the Mercurial number 6. Ha-ha, let us make fun of him again. And you go, yes, but is a rose but a rose? You know, and you say this whole speech, and in your head, everyone goes, oh, look at how... Hey, but in reality, people would go, what the is he talking about? And so I had that feeling watching these scenes because I know that the film is, it seems like it's telling me, oh, look at how cool this guy is and how that line of, you don't deserve to probe the depths of my Emersonian mind. You know, to the guy saying that, you feel like, I'm 14 and this is very deep. But to most people hearing that, you're not thinking, this guy's out of my league. You're thinking, this guy's a asshole.
Hey,
and I don't think the guy who wrote the dialogue wanted us to think that. Does that make sense?
No, I like it. I like it. You're saying that there's almost like a power in showing that you can even memorize the whole of a Shakespearean speech in front of other people. On the third, well, I'll tell you what, that reminds me of someone at school. When I was at school, there was a kid that he bought the Book of Pi, right? Okay. And back then, it's gone back a long time now, secondary school, right? It was a book, and it was the Book of Pi. And it literally, page 1, 3.14, and it went through all the numbers, and the whole book, you could flick through it, and it was just pi up to 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 decimal places or whatever. And he memorized this book, right? And he could just quote. So he could go 3.145945, and he could quote it to like 2. To me, that's the same thing that Adam Driver was doing in Prancing About. Proving, unlike you or me, right? He can remember the whole of To Be or Not to Be. But one more point, right? On the third viewing, it struck me that in the universe, in the cinematic world of Megalopolis, right, had Shakespeare existed, or was, because when I watched the way Adam Driver did it on the third viewing, it was almost like it was his dialogue and he wasn't actually doing the to be or not to be speech. He was saying it as if it had never been said or written before. So do you think he was, in the character in the film, had memorized a speech already written by Shakespeare, or do you think in the film he was they repurposed the Shakespeare speech as something that Caesar would say for real to the people? Because it kind of made a little bit of sense. It made a little bit of sense.
It's very odd, though, because, it's New Rome that the story's taking place in, but it's clearly a surrogate for New York. And they reference Atlantic City, which I live by, in the film, which tells me that there are parts of the world that are similar to ours. I think the gist of it, and I didn't get this from the film, I got it from reading up on the film after, was that Catilinarian conspiracy went a different way, and Sergius Catiline did manage to overthrow the consuls. Or maybe he's saying this is a modern day retelling of that. I think it's not defined. But my guess, if I had to guess, I would say that Shakespeare does exist in this world. But I also think you make a great point. There's a website called Brainy Quotes. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's on So Brainy Quotes is, you can look up anybody, like I like Cormac McCarthy's writing, so I can look at Cormac McCarthy, and Brainy Quotes will list all of his notable quotes from his books, things he'd said. What's that? There's a famous author that said, "Sorry, this letter would have been shorter if I had more time." That's a Brainy quote. It's clever, and sometimes they're more, what's the Roosevelt quote? Let the man... Don't judge him from the crowd. Let the man in the arena with the blood and the sweat. There's a famous Roosevelt quote about, don't judge the guy who's actually fighting the fight because you don't know what it's like. Don't be a Monday morning quarterback. Those quotes are all fantastic, and if you pull one out every once in a while, you can look pretty clever. But if the whole entire movie is just pulling various quotes, and I wonder if, because he sat on this script for so long, that he's just compiling these great quotes, and he's thinking, oh, that quote really fits my theme. But then when you splash them all together, because one of my first notes is these aren't people, like the characters in this. And a big question I have for you, what do you think, is how much of this is meant to be satire and meant to be funny versus unintentional humor?
I think that a lot of the times that I smiled or laughed at the film was due to the fact that it was being made by a person that I would struggle to have a conversation with in a room. This is a guy, he's got a big past, he's got a lot of genius accomplishments in his life, but he is now a person of so many different generations away from me with such a different life that I think that some of the things that he thought were very serious, I think might have been unintentionally funny. I hate to say it, unintentional humor is interesting, because if you or I are ever funny, we want to do it on purpose.
There's a scene where a hand, I actually think it looks kind of cool, where a hand reaches out and grabs the moon. You remember that scene?
Yeah.
Do you think that was a metaphor that Francis Ford Coppola is showing his ass with this film?
Mooning, literally mooning.
He's showing his ass with this movie.
I'll tell you what, right? I've got some more points, right, to go through. But while you mentioned that one, because I've just watched it a few minutes ago, right? Again, what's interesting about that scene, right, is that the clouds form a hand which grabs the moon, and then Gustavo Fring out of Breaking Bad, the mayor, he kind of wakes up cold, shivering in his bed, and he speaks to his wife, and he says to her, "I just dreamt that the clouds formed a hand that went and grabbed the moon." I'm literally shouting at the screen, going, "What you do? You're showing and you're telling. You're wasting my time."
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because mine is, there's this great scene where Adam Driver and the mayor's daughter, which her name is Julia, are driving down the road, and there's this great, it's actually a live action visual effect. It's not as much CGI as it looks, but it's a statue of Lady Justice, and she collapses against the road, and it kind of came out of nowhere, but I thought that's a very cool symbolism, even though it's a bit on the nose. And then Julia looks at the camera and goes, "We are surrounded by injustice." And I felt like we get, I think when you see Lady Justice collapse in the alleyway, I don't think you have to dot that at the end. and what's interesting about with the heavy-handedness, what's interesting, most films that you watch are going to have a plot like this, right? Where, let's say it's a story about a father who's not spending enough time with his kid. It'll be, the plot will end, he's a big businessman, he has like a businessman, he has a lot going on at work. He's got a rival he's trying to like top, and the kid's going, Dad, you told me you'd come to my game. He goes, I know I'd come to your game, but I got this big thing. And he goes through the script, he goes through the plot, and at the end of the movie, maybe he beats the rival, maybe he doesn't, but then he goes to call his family to say, I got the big raise, but they're not picking up because they left and they packed. And you're going, oh wow, the message to that's really profound. It hit me. In this movie, the father would come out after the opening credits and go, it is better to spend time with your son. And everyone would go, oh!
Heavy-handedness. Heavy-handedness. I'll tell you what, let's keep going, else this will be the longest podcast of all time. My final point for the ugly, because the ugly is worse than just the bad, all right?
Yeah.
Is Megalon the most confusing MacGuffin ever? Right? This is a huge point, right? Megalon, indestructible, causes visions. It's unsafe, maybe. You can make dresses out of it. You can build cities in a matter of hours. You can. It glows. This film, and I've watched it 3 times now, and on the third viewing, I really tried to get a grip. And there was a few scenes that I'd missed in the first 2 viewings that I got a little bit more. But overall, I haven't got a clue, right? I haven't got a clue what Megalon is. And apparently, I discovered the principle of Megalon trying to save her life. What the
And that's it. That's all he tells you.
Is it a... Right. There's got to be... Right. A lot of money was thrown at this Neil... This is like Neil Breen on $120 million rather than $10 million.
Yeah.
$10. Like $1. Before I stop, is Megalon, what do you think Francis Ford Coppola means? He must mean something here.
I don't know. He tried to name the daughter after a retirement home. It was like Sunny Hope.
Oh, right. I got a gag. I said this on the first viewing and got a laugh, right? So she goes, if it's a girl, I'll name her Sunny Hope. And then I shouted, and if it's a boy, I'll name him Sunny Delight.
Nice.
Right. Anyway, right. Sorry, can you remember what you were going to say now? I've got my Sunny Delight joke out.
Oh, with the Megalon
Megalon.
And it reminds me of Unobtainium from Avatar. And in Avatar, I kind of got it, because James Cameron is like, I can't be bothered naming this shit. Look, we can't get it. It's Unobtainium. And there's a cynical take to that I enjoyed. With this stuff, there is no, it can be whatever he needs it to be in the plot. What was your first reaction? Not the third reaction. The first reaction, they do the Breaking Bad plot where the 12-year-old comes up to him and it's like, oh, it's a 12-year-old, and shoots him. It's literally, and I'm not saying Breaking Bad's the only show that can ever do that, but I thought of that. Anyway, they shoot him, they cover his face with the Megalon stuff, and he goes in to see Wow Platinum, and he takes, and then the funniest overacting since Nicolas Cage in The Wicker Man, when so he comes in, if you haven't seen the film, and he's been shot in the head, and they do this like RoboCop like surgery on him where half his skull's missing. I don't know why his lips are missing. I don't know why the bullet took his lips off, but anyway. So they put all this Megalon stuff in his head, and he's in a bandage, and they roll him into his rich uncle's house with the bandage, and people keep saying, Caesar, what do you... And he goes, no! And he just... And I'm like watching this, and I don't know, am I supposed to be laughing at this? Is this supposed to be a serious thing? And then he takes off the bandages, and we're suddenly playing... You have your Sgt. Pepper shirt. We're playing Maharishi Indian music in the background, and his face is glowing. And then she goes something like, oh, we'll do anything you want. And then someone else walks in the room and she just drops it, and we just never revisit it. And he gets shot in the head. The Megalon goes in his face. He's weirdly deformed. no, he's getting headaches, and then like a scene later, he's completely normal, and we never revisit it again.
It's
and I have no idea. That's my answer. I have no idea.
It's a mess. So the film's a mess. I know it's on the third viewing that they foretold or foreshadowed the reconstruction of his face because a dog breaks its leg. And they wrap the dog's leg, and they say it'll fuse in a few weeks. It'll fuse, and the megalon will become the leg. I missed that the first two viewings, so they did foreshadow it.
I did not catch that. Yeah,
but I'm right. So it is part of my ugly trilogy, right? The megalon. It can't be used as a MacGuffin because it's the main point of the film. You've got this genius architect who comes up with a new element or new substance as a result of the confusing death of his wife, which he uses to build a city, and the film also uses it to make a see-through dress. It's mental. It's mental.
Well, and we have to, if we're going over the bad, we have to go over the theme or the just what the film is about. And so the film is he's sort of an altruistic Ayn Rand, like the Fountainhead. And in that, whereas her story is more libertarian based, where it's like we need this philosopher king and he can do what he wants and he'll lead us. This one, he's more altruistic in that his goal is to make this city that everyone can live in, but he never tackles any of the problems. He never tackles what this city actually is. So it's like we see that Giancarlo, I'm saying his name, Giancarlo Esposito.
Just call him
Cicero.
Gus Fring.
Cicero, yeah, is sort of representative of the bureaucracy that's opposing this new idea. And Shia LaBeouf seems to be like a Trump stand-in. And then, Wow Platinum seems to be representative of the sort of celebrity gossip part of our society, and all that's great. I get it, but they never state like how did Adam Driver's character. He marries the mayor's daughter, which you could say symbolizes joining together with the new generation of the bureaucracy, but that's very tenuous and weak. He basically just says, "I'm a genius. You people are stupid." And then he gets together with her, and the mayor goes, "Oh, I hate your guts, but I guess I got to go along with this." And then he makes an airport sidewalk. And that's like the sign of the future city is an airport sidewalk.
It's like Francis Ford Coppola's never realized that they're in every airport.
Yeah, well, I think it's just trying to show that, he makes the one line, everyone will have a garden in their home. Because earlier in the film, he just destroys a bunch of like tenements and things where poor people live. And it's like, And we kind of go later, well, they'll have this beautiful city after the satellite destroys it. What I'm saying is they've never, if I said, hey, I'm making a movie and it's about how because the overall idea is a good one.
I'll tell you what, Bill.
How can we positively move into the future?
I'll tell you
But
what.
I don't feel like he earned the ending.
You can say a lot of this because I'm now going into the good, right? Before we get to the bad, right? The good. And
before we hit to the good, can I say the whole speech at the very end sounded to me like Wonder Woman 1984 when she's like, "We are people that we just like each other, the world," and everyone just that's the end of the film. One more
Very
quote in the
strange.
bad. I've got so many bad notes, but
the bad. We've got a whole section on the bad in a minute.
Oh, okay. I got one thing I want to say before we get to the good. Is the one that really made me laugh. When Lawrence Fishburne's in the car with him and he's talking about time, and he's like, didn't it remind you of Forrest Gump where he's like, you got time crab cakes, you got time hot dogs, there's time hamburgers, there's time tater tots. Like it
didn't, but it does now. It didn't, but it does now.
I just definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good because you're touching on things that we're gonna go over anyway, and we've done them now. The good, right?
Okay, yeah.
5 points for good, right?
Okay.
In fact, let's get point 4 and 5 out of the way first because they're just single words, right? The star of this film is the Citroen DS. That car. I don't know if you noticed, but they seem to be using it throughout. What an amazing looking car. Perfect choice, right? That's
for the car.
The car is the best thing about the film, right? Let me tick that off as said. Citroen DS, tick. The Chrysler building. I've always loved that building, iconic building, and the use of this building. On the third viewing, I realised that the beginning of the film where he kind of steps out and he does that thing where he steps off the edge
Yeah.
of the building,
Yeah.
and then he stops time, and somehow stopping time means that he can
He's not gonna fall.
somehow elevate back again. But he must open the window of his office or his apartment because he lives at the top of the Chrysler building.
Yeah.
And that building, in its all its majesty, what a beautiful building! This is the Citroen DS and the Chrysler building are the stars of this film. Right, it's easy, right? 4.4 and 5 out of the way, right? Important stuff now. The good, the ambition of this film, right? To me, it's like a meditation on time and our lack of time. And as you get older, you've touched on it, so we won't go over this too much, but the idea that perhaps you do kind of dream about the idea of stopping time. I have issues with time. Anyone who knows me knows I've got issues with time, like chronophobia or something. That kind of hit me. The idea of having a muse, someone you can meet in life who brings the best out of you. I think that's what he was trying to get at with the relationship between Caesar and Julia, I think. But mostly...
Go back to the club.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But mostly, right? So, to me, this film was a kind of mixture of Citizen Kane, Metropolis, and King Kong, right? And what was I... No.
The funny thing is if Adam Driver climbed to the top of that building swatting away planes, I wouldn't blink an eye by the end of the film.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there was moments of... there was actually moments in this where it looked like Adam Driver was being animated in stop motion. I think it was on purpose, cranking the camera down and stuff. Look...
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'll add that to the good.
Shit.
His tripped out scenes with the
was
different
mental.
arms. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And another thing to go with
Yeah.
what you were saying with the muse
That was
that
very
I really
Metropolis.
enjoyed. Yeah, what I really enjoyed was and I don't know, this is how I took it. So Julia can see when he stops time when no one else can, and then when he has the scene where he's visiting his dead wife, everyone else just sees a bed and she sees what he sees.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really beautiful representation of love and loneliness when someone else can see his visions when no one else can. I thought that was a very beautiful way to show that sometimes you meet people that just get you when no one else gets you.
Holy
and
shit.
I thought that was really cool.
Okay, I didn't really see it like that, but I think you're right. And I think that you should have been employed as like a PR on this film. Francis Ford Coppola. No, you are explaining some of these scenes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I like that. Metropolis, right? The final spoiler. The final line of Metropolis is the mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart, right? King Kong, final line. It was beauty killed the beast. And then I'm going to chuck a little bit of Citizen Kane in there with the misuse of power. And there was a scene with the mirrors where he walks between two mirrors, like kind of infinity mirrors, which is directly from Citizen Kane, right? What I like about, I can tell he's referencing those films, and especially, funnily enough, no surprise, it's no shit Sherlock, Metropolis. But yeah, the mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart. This seems to be, right, a kind of, this is a film about, what, the importance of art? Do you reckon? Like...
yeah, well, I think it's the importance of art. I think it's the importance of listening, and that's where I sort of have a problem, because I think he's attacking the cult of personality with the Shia LaBeouf character. So the Shia LaBeouf character shows up to those same people that lost their homes because he blew up tenements. He takes advantage of their anger to rise to power. I think that's an allusion to Trump by Coppola. I don't want to get into like actual politics, but I do think that we, in the world right now, and we have for a long time, suffer from problems because of the cult of personality. Dune was written about this too, where it's like this one philosopher king savior is going to come, he's going to help us all, and he's going to like walk us into this future that's better than what we have now. And I've always believed, with my own, ideology or whatever, that we need to follow ideals and ideas. So in other words, we need to like believe in actual things, not people, because people can be bad, they can be good and also corrupt, and corrupt and also good. And So I think the idea of us just waiting on someone to save us in our current predicament is a bad way to go about things. Even in a ideal world, even if that savior, so to speak, is a good person, I think it's kind of how what percentage of people are monotheistic. So I think we're sort of wired to want to follow the great whatever, and I think I don't agree with that. I think it's ideas and ideals that we need to follow. And if we stood strong with that, like in America, without getting into the current political thing, we have the Citizens United, where the Supreme Court voted that corporations are people and that they can anonymously influence and bribe essentially political candidates. I think if you took conservatives and Democrats, I think both of them would say we want to get rid of that. I don't think that's a contentious issue amongst politically. I think most people want to get rid of that, but we'll never do it because we're fighting. And we're fighting over cult of personality. I like that guy. I like this person. And there's ideas that go with that, but it's more the sort of sweep of the people. And so even though I think Francis Ford Coppola meant well, because this guy's supposed to be a good guy who is doing it altruistically, I think that's dangerous. I think, if we could all say, hey, I don't think bribing politicians is a good way forward, and we could get together and go, let's just tackle this, and then we can get on to this other stuff, the world will be a better place. But we don't do that because we're pitted against each other with these sort of, big personalities. So I think he meant well, and I think the character in this is a good person in the sense of they want to help everybody, but I don't think that's the path forward, in my opinion.
Very good. How are you at making wine? Right. Point number 2. So and this is good. Remember, this is good. Right. The overacting. Right. The star of the film for me, Aubrey Plaza. Right. Wow, Platinum. I loved. Christ, I loved. Right. I loved her in this film. I can't. I loved everything about her. She was the best thing in it.
Thank you, Anti-Wow.
Point number 3, the one after this one, is certain scenes, right? I quite liked, so I thought she was great. I thought Julia was good. I mean, she was originally over here in like a teen soap called Hollyoaks, and I think she ended up being in Game of Thrones as a little bit part. But I really liked her, and I'm not sure how much she was given to work with here, really, but I think she did.
Well, I think it's
okay with what she had.
Well, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. It seems like Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, and Adam Driver read the script or kind of went on set and went, okay. And Dustin Hoffman, and what's his name? The older
John
guy
Voight.
Who's John Voight. I think they all said, I'm just gonna chew the scenery. I'm gonna just go completely. And I think Julia's character, actress, was like, I'm going to take this seriously and play this like a serious part. And I thought she did fine. I've seen people criticize her. I agree with you. I think she did great.
Yeah, I've read, in front of her. Actually, since watching it, I've read a little bit, and I've read that overall people thought she wasn't very good in it. I disagree.
I agree.
She was
I
fine.
think she was fine.
She was fine.
Yeah, and I would argue that Adam Driver was wrong for the lead in this movie.
Yeah.
And that was a big sticking point for me.
I've got Caesar. I've got Adam Driver as a good here. With the overacting, I'm about to tell. I'm telling you, Adam Driver also features in the bad, so don't worry about it. Some of the overacting in this film was, holy shit! Was it funny? Was it unintentionally funny? We'll talk about that in the bad, right? Scenes, right? Point number 3, scenes. The anti-wow scene, right? Right. The first viewing, I was what the. The second viewing, I was what the. And the third viewing, I was.
Audrey Plaza.
It might be the second best scene in the film, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you the best scene first, and then you can tell me about if you've got any goods for the scenes, right? The bonus scene. I mean, obviously spoilers. The bonus scene.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Good lord.
Right. God. So let me just say now, I didn't like John Voight in this film. I thought he was miscast. I didn't like. Well, we'll get to that. But I thought
John Voight, he felt like he was too old to act anymore. So he was just like, which to play a doddering old banker kind of fit. I don't know how you could do. I don't think Laurence Olivier could be like, how do you like my boner?
Like, I don't
fantastic.
know if you could... Right. So right. So right. Best scene in the film. best scene in the film. Right, when he said, "How do you like my boner?" I thought, "Oh my god, where are we going with this?" But kind of Cleopatra a little bit. That was good. I liked that. Did you have any specific good scenes that you think would rank in the good of my good, bad, and ugly?
That what I'd rank as good.
A good scene. The silence and the tumbleweeds speak volumes.
I just think well, actually, I will say, on the one hand, you've got you've got the celebration where John Voight's just pointing everything that's happening. Chariot race! That's bad. But Adam Driver, and he talks about psilocybin like it's a party drug. Now, I have never taken psilocybin, but as a fan of Terrence McKenna, I can tell you if I ever did try it, it wouldn't be at the club. That seems like a very intense thing to do at the club. But I think Adam Driver sort of getting high and them showing him, I thought was very well done. I had a big problem, and I know this isn't a good scene. I had a big problem with the visual effects. There were parts of it that looked good and parts of it that looked so bad. It like reminded me of like Pantera had a video for Planet Caravan, which was a Black Sabbath song.
Yeah, I remember
where it was
that,
like the best the year 2000 could do with computer graphics, and they're going and everyone went wow at the time, and now you look at it and it's very dated. And it just there's a scene at the end where all the people run up and then they reverse it. So it's the same scene, but reversed. And I saw that in a video about the effects because I was so that's not my own idea. But, so literally like the people run up and it's almost like if I hit mirrored display on this and showed myself from another angle and acted like it was another shot. And some of the lighting was just off. And I believe they used the volume at the very beginning for the scenes on top of the Chrysler building when they're standing, and are surrounded. And the volume is what they use in The Mandalorian, where it's basically a TV screen surrounding them. And they use Unreal Engine to sort of make the background so the actors can see it as they act. But then he fired everybody. And I think they just went for green screen after. And it was one of those things where these sorts of movies, I never once believed I was actually in any place. Like, I never once in the whole movie believed, even when they did shoot outside, I didn't believe we were outside. That's how, there was just a lot of shots that just didn't, there's a way you can hint. I think David Fincher is one of the better filmmakers at, you go, oh, he didn't use any CGI. And then they go, actually, this whole city block he made this, and you go, wow, I didn't even know. This thing, it was reminding me at every turn that it's not real. Like, it's just taking me out of the fact that they're not in a real place.
Very good point. I felt the same, actually. There was moments in this that felt like a point and click adventure. There was a moment where, probably the pivotal moment of the whole film, where Adam Driver, for some reason, is standing on like a girder being held up by cranes.
Yes.
And you got the whole city.
And then she comes out.
She comes up, and this is the moment where she says, Adam Driver, please, can you stop time for me? And he's like,
yeah,
God, time stop for Julia. And time stops. And it was almost like The Secret of Monkey Island or something. Like, it was such a perfect backdrop that I could tell that they had no place in.
Well, I remember at the very first scene of the film when he comes out, my first note that I made was, why are the clouds moving so fast?
Right, okay, yeah. Well, throughout the film, for all those really meaningful emotional scenes, the clouds are racing. So either that's for artistic effect or it's a meditation on time.
Well, no, I think it's definitely an artistic effect.
Time's running out. It's time's running out.
So you've got a film with characters I don't believe as people.
This is the good, remember?
In a place I don't believe. Like, I don't know what
hey, I'll tell you what, before we move on to the bad, because we're going to talk about all this now, this is the most fun part. Yeah, you're right. Did you ever watch Mindhunter by Fincher?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, love it.
I loved that. I mean, it's been cancelled, but I loved that. And then I found out that none of it was all green screen, the whole thing. None of it was filmed outside. Even the shots of him, like, approaching his house.
And I never knew.
All green screen. The whole thing was shot on green screen, and I never knew. And
I never knew.
$120 million, and I'm describing Megalopolis as a secret of Monkey Island.
Well, and the art directors
argued
with him, and they fired him. And I saw there's a YouTube video. I'll maybe make a comment to it where they go over. It's like a 15-minute video going over the effects, and they just go over how like the lighting kind of isn't right. And he hired his nephew to do the visual effects, and that's funny. But his nephew is very accomplished. He works for Marvel, so it's not like he's some schlub. But I think it's not that they're not talented people working on it. I think it's that when you normally make a film of this budget and scale, all of these shots are planned out ahead of time, and they're meticulously sort of what do they call it when they draw it before you even do it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everything is marked and everything is blocked, and you have
Storyboarded.
a very, storyboarded. So they have a very clear idea of what they're doing. But when you do it Francis' way, his way of just being like, well, we rewrote this, let's do this differently. It's very hard to just wing it with visual effects, from my understanding.
And can I just say, so to end the good, overall, weirdly, I thought it all looked.
To end the good.
I thought it was. I thought it looked quite good. So overall, you mentioned something to me. It's gold, right? So there's a color scheme which is gold, and they follow this through ruthlessly. But overall, I quite like the look of the film.
Would you call? Well, I was going to say, as you sit there with your colorful room,
I'm trying to
and your Sergeant Pepper
join
outfit,
in.
Would you describe the art direction of this film as gaudy?
Yeah, he was invested in the idea of having this thing sparkle on the screen, and along with the costumes, I think. And the overacting. I tell you what, perhaps it was like when you're editing video or whatever, and you have the option, I can turn the saturation right up, the color saturation. This film was the equivalent of putting the saturation and the vibrancy up to 100. Literally, come on, more acting. I want to see your acting. The bad.
Well, let me end good with this.
Yeah.
We complain all the time. There's, Marvel movies, and there's all these cookie cutter Hollywood movies that we're sick of. I'm a champion. I'm like the only one that like Bo is afraid. There are other people, but not a lot of people do. I love Synecdoche, New York. I like difficult films, and I like that he tried. And
Yes.
so it's a shame because I'm shitting on it because I have to be honest of what I actually thought. But he tried.
No, he tried.
He had
ambition.
He had he had a grandiose idea.
Yes.
That he was very, very passionate about, and people wouldn't fund him, so he said, "F you, I'm going to make it myself."
Yes.
And I think there's something to be lauded, and I feel kind of conflicted in that as a filmmaker, I love his movies, and I have a great deal of respect for his talent. Some of the other stuff that has come out allegedly has sort of made me dislike him a bit more. And again, I don't know. I wasn't there for any of these, so I can't tell you if they're true or not. But I will say that I give him credit for trying, and I want more people to try. And I'm sad that I didn't like this film, and I'm sad that the majority of people didn't like this film, because I want more of this film in the sense that I want more people that aren't afraid to kind of shoot their shot and do experimental movies. I think we'd all be the better for it. And so I'm always sad. As much as we're laughing, I'm sad that this movie failed.
Yeah, and I think it really, really has failed. And I think what you were saying about your inability to even watch it speaks volumes. It really does. The bad. And let's just preface the bad with a quote which I've written down and put a box around at the bottom of this bit of paper. Anyway, revenge tastes best whilst wearing a dress. Anyway, number one, I've got 5 points. Number one,
Okay.
casting and overacting.
Yeah.
I had it as the good. Now the bad. Fundy, Morpheus, right? I hated Morpheus in this film. Every time he spoke, I hated him. He sounded like the narrator at the beginning of Plan 9 from Outer Space. Anyone is aware of that monstrosity.
Well, yeah.
What was Morpheus? He was playing Morpheus. He was
playing
rubbish.
He was playing Dr. Expositional dialogue.
It was horrible.
He literally
horrible.
just walked around. He followed around Adam
horrible.
Driver, and he was like, on a cold morning one day,
It was rubbish.
Yeah.
One positive was when he was doing, the narration was happening, right?
Yeah.
In the apartment, the narration was happening. He was just standing there silently, and then he interjected at the end, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that bit? That was the only bit I went, Oh no, it was talking about Julia. Julia is
Yeah.
this and Julia is that, and then he was standing there silently, and then he just went, "Oh, I quite like her," and then walked off. And I thought, okay, I'll give you that one. But apart from
Do you
that,
think-
I'm taking the red pill or blue pill.
If you're casting this film, do you cast Adam Driver in the lead?
No, Adam Driver, right? Have you seen Marriage Story?
No.
It's a film. It's so
I've seen him in Star Wars.
in Marriage Story. It's a story of a divorce. But he's amazing in it, right? So the guy can act, and I think he was the best thing. He was the best thing in the Star Wars sequels, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he wasn't he?
I think my argument against him is not that he can't act, because he certainly can act, and he's definitely charismatic, or he wouldn't be a leading man actor. But he's not the right kind of charismatic for this role. I think you need like Heath Ledger Joker, Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. Someone that just has that magnetism that you go, I get why they're all following him around.
He's got nothing.
And though Adam Driver is much more has more magnetism than you or I, and he's a leading man actor, so it's not out of the question.
He absolutely doesn't.
But I think that there are actors that just have whatever that it factor is, that you're just like, yeah, like Leonardo DiCaprio, somebody. Heath Ledger was somebody like that, where you're just like, I'll follow them around, and I believe that cult of personality would kind of come up around them.
Right. So he's right. So I'm not saying, because he also features in the good, right? I'm not saying that everything he does is bad, right? But in this film, when Adam Driver's bad, he's appalling. There's a scene where he dances, and I don't know why he's doing it. The guy got red carpet.
The tug of war.
That was the way he does it. He does it like twice. But there's a scene where they're on the red carpet. They're going into some kind of party, and Julia's just trying to like pull him through, like just come with me. And he's going, ding, ding, ding. He's doing all this stupid dancing.
Yeah.
And I just thought,
I kind of like that.
yeah, no. There must be people must like it because they've all done it, and everyone involved has gone, let's keep that in the film. I couldn't understand why an architect who was putting forward his proposals to recreate a new Rome and produce a new city, and he wants people to have trust in him, and he's already under suspicion of killing his wife, why he would, at every opportunity, act like a twat.
Isn't it funny how when you said he's suspicion of killing his wife, I thought back to what was the Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they do the same thing with Brad Pitt's character. And throughout the whole movie, you're going, I wonder if he killed his wife. Yeah. And in this movie, I could give less of a shit. I was like, I don't care.
It's point number 4 on the thing, right? The overacting. So I've got issues with the casting as well. Dustin Hoffman, didn't like him. John Voight, overall, he grew
we
on
have
me,
to talk.
but...
Sorry to interrupt you. We have to talk about my favorite scene in the whole film, where Dustin Hoffman's character, Dr. Opp, is like, I'm going to go take care of Shia LaBeouf. And then they cut to a scene where and they do a Family Guy cutaway, where Shia LaBeouf goes, well, I don't know what happened to him. They cut away, and he goes, ah! And like clearly cardboard like stuff. I thought that was the funniest scene.
It's
in the
so
film
strange. It's almost like they almost killed him off screen. I mean, they did a Family Guy cut.
I mean, he's on screen. Yeah,
but you're right. It's like it's almost like someone said to Francis Ford Coppola, Francis, we should address it. We should address it.
We didn't show him dying. I wonder though. That was one of the points where I'm like, am I supposed to laugh at this? Like, how am I supposed to go? Oh, like they took care of him. Is that supposed to be funny?
Well, I mean, it was caused by the Shia LaBeouf character, who is playing this Claudio guy who is having sex with his sisters, and it's very explicitly said that he is having. And when you read in the history of it, the guy he's based on was having sex with his sisters. And he had a really bad. I mean, I did originally in some of my notes here. I talk about Claudio's haircut, but I don't think I want to talk about haircuts.
Did Caesar have a Caesar haircut? I think he did.
It's a strange one. I think the casting of this film was completely crazy, but I suppose it kind of makes sense.
I mean, they had a lot of big names, and obviously his sister was in this. Is it Tabitha? What's her real name?
Adrian
Shire. Adrian.
Adrian! Do you know what? On the third viewing, right, I picked up on it, right? Yeah, you're right. Francis Ford Coppola's sister's in this. Adrian, Rocky's wife, right? Out of the Rocky films. And it's, I mean, maybe on the third viewing it's clear that his mother, this is Adam Driver's Caesar's mother, and she basically hates him and says to his face, I'd rather have had a girl, and just a couple of scenes. I'm not sure what it was supposed to be saying.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like all this whole movie, and we talked about it.
It's a mess.
They tell you this. The mother tells, I don't like you, and they don't. There's not a scene where she's just rude, and you can tell that she's standoffish towards him.
Yeah.
And she's not supportive. She just says, I don't like you.
I don't like you.
And it's like, so why are we here for the film? What's
Yeah.
that? There's a meme for office meetings where they go, this could have been an email. And I feel like a lot of what they say could have been an email.
Yeah. Point number 2, and we've already touched on it, so we don't have to touch on it more. Shakespeare. Then we go into Latin at one point between Gus Fring and Julia for no reason whatsoever. Yeah. And then Julia proves her mental capacity by remembering quotes from philosophers and stuff from ancient Rome, and she just reels them off. She literally reels off
Marcus Aurelius
quotes. The object of life, and this one's quite interesting because it probably sums the film up. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding yourself in the ranks of the insane. Megalopolis.
Wasn't there another quote where it's like it's better to
she does it
show
twice
and not tell? Well, didn't she does another
They
one?
go
where
with
she
twice.
It's better to show and not tell. There's literally a quote in the film.
If she
about
says that. No, right. So back to one of my first points, which was unnecessary plot bits. Deep fake versus birth certificate. So Julia quotes Marcus Aurelius, right? And then she quotes him again. Any editor worth their salt would say, cut one of those out. Cut one of them out. I mean, I won't be cutting. I should cut lots of this podcast out, but I won't. I'll leave it all in. In homage to Francis Ford Coppola, this podcast is going to be an hour and a half.
I have it in my notes. I do like the "Don't let the now destroy the forever." I think is a good quote.
Yeah, I did put a few quotes here, and there are some good ones. Nothing quite beats "Revenge tastes best" whilst wearing a dress, though. Depiction of alcoholism. Point number 3. I think they were trying to show that Adam Driver was an alcoholic. Am I right or wrong in that? Because it was so heavy-handed.
He was doing He was doing like heavy psychedelic drugs.
So,
which again, you're not really addicted. Like, I don't know anybody that's addicted to psilocybin.
Well,
but maybe I just read that.
There's a point. There's a point. I mean, there's a point with they're in this room, and Julia, or I think it's Julia, kicks over a couple of whiskey bottles or something on the floor, and I'm thinking, they're trying to reference it. I didn't really. I'm not sure where this genius has the time to design buildings in between all of this. It's a very strange film. Point number 4, the bad. Megalon, the death of the wife. We've already talked about Megalon.
Explain this to me. Explain what happened to the wife to me, because I feel like I get the gist.
3 viewings.
Yeah,
I think I can tell you, right? 3 viewings.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd viewing, I really, really tried to watch and listen. Right, I believe that his wife committed suicide by driving off the bridge and drowning because she couldn't handle his one vision. I'm a genius architect, and it's all I'm going to talk about. And I think she killed herself because he was a twat.
Okay.
And then he tried to save her. And then as he saved her, because he had so much love for her, even though he caused her to kill herself, he created
As you do.
Megalon. It makes no sense at all.
And
it's
he created So it's like he's an architect. Did he use a T-square to make what? How did he make Megalon?
It's not because I don't know what Megalon is, and it's really important that you really should know what it is. It's then therefore hard to understand how he creates it or what it is. It's the product of love. I
'Cause
think.
don't you need like a hadron collider or something to make new elements? No,
Yes, but it seems
I
like
could be
he.
incorrect. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. No, but I think from watching it, from listening through and seeing what the vibe, the whole thing of the film is, I believe that it's that kind of. He created it because of the power of his love. So it's like magic,
Like
and no
what's
one's ever
that-
loved
what-
like he's loved.
like Huey Lewis.
The power of love. Holy shit! Holy shit!
Why didn't they play that? Dude, what
Holy
if when he was
shit.
dude, if I made this film when he was making, I would have a scene where he's making Megalon. Don't need money, don't need fame, don't need a credit
Well, I'm
card.
gonna do it.
Ride this train.
I'm gonna do it.
I'm
gonna do
it. And then, like at the end, when he's giving the speech for the city, dun, 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 bow, bow.
I mean, so then Gus Fring. Right, okay. But talking about that, right? I've just rewatched Breaking Bad for like the 13th time. This is the sort of thing. I've got no real life. I just rewatch
Yeah.
TV shows again and again, right?
Breaking Bad's so good.
I'm telling you, greatest series of all time, right? It is. And Gus Fring is that performance.
I am almost
fantastic.
mad because Giancarlo Stanton is such a fantastic actor. He's so good in Breaking Bad and Better Call
He's
Saul.
just
but I feel
perfect.
like they just typecast him as like not as good Gus Fring. Like in Star Wars, he's not as good Gus Fring, and he's a little more cowardly. Like he's not exactly like Gus Fring, but I would love to see him play against type because it's like he's
You're being
he felt wasted in this.
You're being
He felt
relatively
wasted in this.
You're being relatively kind. I was going to go much further than that. I was going to say that in Breaking Bad, his performance is 10 out of 10, like up
Yeah.
there with the greatest performances of all time as a ruthless criminal mastermind.
Oh, sure.
I thought he was shocking in this. Shocking. He's up there with Lawrence Fishburne for just being totally and utterly shit.
But what
but-
does he have to do? He
no,
looks
but
upon.
We
He
know
looks
he
upon
can
him.
act.
Here, it's like take 3. Oh, he got me again. Like what?
Yeah.
The whole film is him. Like
No.
there's no agency.
No, I've got to like wind that back a little bit. I've got to imagine that sorry, I've forgotten his name. But
Giancarlo
Giancarlo
Esposito.
Esposito. Imagine if he was watching this podcast now and he's like, who the hell do you? No, right. So what I'm saying that he is a fantastic actor, and I'm saying that I think he is terrible in this film. So it can't be all his fault.
Well, he admitted in
can't
press
be all his fault.
afterwards that he doesn't understand the film.
Right,
And he was
right.
just
Well,
like, I'm
and
just
that-
trying
right.
to do a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the thing you're working on, if you don't understand it, then you are doomed. So that explains that. Right. My final point, and then you can wrap up with all the things that you want to say that I haven't brought up, right? Point number 5 of the bad. The insignificance of the crashing satellite, right? Now, the whole film, it almost like it could have had like a time, like an actual ticking timer.
Yeah.
Because it starts off, and very, very early on, it sort of shows that there's this Russian satellite that's kind of falling out of orbit. And it's going to strike the Earth. And it seems like originally it's going to hit some... And it's quite funny where they say it's going to hit a country that like they don't care about,
Yeah.
so it's fine. But it turns out later on that the satellite's actually going to fall right into the centre of New York, New Rome. And it does, right?
Well, they had to burn Rome down.
And there's a scene where it hits, and inconsequential, big kind of, like 9/11 kind of holes in the ground, and it had the potential to be a big deal, but no.
It's interesting
No.
because
No.
it's another thing that in theory is awesome, but in practice it didn't work. So I love film noir, and a lot of times when we read a hard boiled or film noir, there's always like the greatest winter storm in the last 20 years is gonna hit, and then the story takes place during the storm. In the first Joker film, there was a garbage strike, so garbage was piled up. In The Watchmen, I forget, there was something, and there was like political riots, and so the idea is this background thing that's going to like bring this simmering tension up to the surface, but the tension is gone by the time it hits, and then the next scene they go, that helped us fix it. Deus ex machina is, I believe, what they call it. And like so many things, he just had so many ideas and so much he wanted to put into a 2.5 hour movie he doesn't have time to develop any of it because all of it is vying for attention. Like that dog scene that I didn't catch. You're watching it the first time. You go, why? Okay, the dog. Okay, you're kind of half listening because the dialogue invites you to ignore it because it's so flighty and so disconnected from what you're watching. I didn't feel like you're not rooting for the characters. I mean, some people might say Aubrey Plaza just because she was fun in this, and she was. And I think she really took it and ran with it. But yeah, it's just you're not going to make sense of it. And I think in his mind, he just had all of these ideas and cool references, but no one told him like this isn't just working. Like it's like I get that you have references and that's cool, but the thing has to. The first goal is this has to work right now, and I think that satellite was another thing that just like it was like his face. It was like him getting shot. And I know the Megalon works, but what's the point of that? I don't know.
Sunny delight written down. And so, well, okay. Gus Fring, promise you will build nobly, then gets headbutted by the baby. That was quite funny at the end. I like that.
Oh God!
I watched that 3 times.
Yeah.
How did they leave
so
that
the
shot
very
in?
last scene? Yeah. So the very last scene, he has this. What is the line he says?
He says, Gus Fring, he says, promise you will build nobly. And at that moment, the baby he's holding headbutts him. And it was like Ed Wood. It was like the Ed Wood film where someone,
Fine,
cut, brilliant print. And someone will say, are you sure you didn't want to, did you not see? Knocked over a gravestone. No, it's fine. No one will notice. It's $120 million.
Why
and the
did they
baby
do
just
another?
headbutted him.
Why did they do another take of that? And then and we have to reference that we mentioned it briefly. Sunny Hope, which sounds like a retirement home, and
Yes.
If it's not Sunny
Yes.
Hope, it's name it Francis. And it's like, so he made a movie where he's the stand-in for the lead. And again, my conjecture.
Francis.
And then he also said, by the way,
shit.
the future should be named after me too.
Yes. Oh shit. Do you know what? Only an hour or so ago when I was rewatching it for the third time, and they say, if it's a girl, I'll call it Sunny Hope, and if it's a boy, I'll call it Francis. And I thought, why would you call it Francis? Francis, of course. Of course, he's saying it. He's being blatant. He's saying, I may be close to death, but I'm the future. I'm also the future.
Yeah.
What a strange... Bill, what a strange film overall.
Yeah, I was rooting for it, and I think he has made, I don't even think it's arguable, the greatest films of all time. I mean, I think, the conversation is good, but I think Apocalypse Now and the first two Godfathers, I even enjoyed Dracula, and he fired the art team from Dracula too, but I found the quirkiness of sort of the design on that film to be endearing. Like, I liked it. And I think you could argue that Keanu Reeves was miscast. But other than that, I thought it's a fantastic film.
It's a theme,
I know a lot of his films that from my buddies who watch watch a lot of his latest films say that they are not very good, after that period. So it's not a surprise that this one isn't. And so I think this guy did leave a debt to cinema, and I think every filmmaker who is a filmmaker is probably indebted to him in some way. So he does have the clout to claim to be a little bit of the future of cinema. It's just sad to see him sort of go out on something that feels embarrassing. And we're joking with it. Maybe in time, I will watch this again. Hopefully, if it becomes legally available, that I can watch it again. So maybe looking, it'll become a cult classic. Hopefully for the right reasons. This feels more like Neil Breen on the Room now, it's just sad because this guy, he took a lot of chances. Multiple times we talk about him selling his vineyard. I'm not rich enough to know how to pronounce that correctly. Like during Apocalypse Now, he had his house, his mortgage on the line. He was constantly putting up everything for his vision, and that's commendable. And there's a lot good with him, and then there's a lot bad. With some of these things that are coming to light. He's also an 80-year-old guy. He's also probably had a lot of money for a lot of time. And so it's probably easy to sort of lose touch with the ground.
Doesn't
I was
it
thinking
seem
about that a lot watching the film. Yeah, good.
I was going to say, doesn't it seem to you that it's one of those cases where someone has had yes said to them for too long?
Yeah.
And
Not just yes. I think about like me and you have day jobs and we're going to go to work and we have people we deal with every day and problems and all these things, and my kids are in sports, and so you're just around people. And I wonder about when you reach a level of celebrity for so long where everyone owns a vineyard or like a second house and all of these things. Like, is it difficult then? Like, Martin Scorsese doesn't seem to have forgotten about what it was like to live poor in the inner city. And I'm not saying Francis Ford Coppola has forgotten, but it felt out of touch, I'll say.
well, I'll tell you
characters in this film.
Yeah, compare this film, because we reviewed Killers of the Flower Moon as well.
Yeah, which is a masterpiece.
Yeah, which
comparatively,
the world at large, I think, loved it. I was like, I think I can't remember. I think I liked it, but very different, aren't they? Very different. Very different.
Well, and there's some cool chances and some cool things in this film. It's like you can find like the moon shot when he's high and the way he films it.
The use of
like
cameras, the use of
metaphor.
different types of camera.
Yeah.
Not every filmmaker does that. He would alternate between very specific cameras, like old school cameras with the kind of with the vignetting and things to prove. And it was a good scene where
and the movie ended with the Looney Tunes started to do that. The Looney Tunes sort of zoom in.
Very, very strange. And there was a moment where that was used to good effect, where Gus Fring was whispering into Adam Driver's ear, and then the vignette just came in to sort of say, "We're now going to let you hear what he's, Shh. And there was moments where I thought, "Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good." There was moments of lighting. There was moments of camera work. There was moments of this, moments of that, moments of acting. But overall,
the question
it was
would be
one big mess.
If you took his idea for this film and made it into a TV series or a movie, but you gave it to like a really good writer and then a really good editor who he would listen to and say, "I know that this is a good idea, but we don't have time for this. We've got to pick." Like, I wonder what this film would look like if there were a few more people. Like, they always talk about Lucas with Star Wars, that his wife edited it, and then she kind of took what was unwatchable and made it into this like machine. And I wonder if he had some more people in his ear that were real pros at just distilling his ideas, because this is the man that brought us. But all of those films are co-written, and I don't know who edited those. I wonder what this could have been.
Well, there you go. I mean, in a minute, I'm gonna tell you to shout "time stop," and that will be the end of the podcast.
Okay. Before we end the podcast,
what are we doing
I'll
next?
say that next we are going to be reviewing David Lynch's Lost Highway.
Another easy film.
Might be. I love Twin Peaks would be my favorite work of his, but Lost Highway is probably my favorite film of his. A lot of people would lean more towards Mulholland Drive, but I really like Lost Highway. So we're going to be reviewing Lost Highway next.
Go and watch it. I've got a physical copy of it because it's unavailable in any streaming in this country, and I've yet to ever watch Lost Highway.
You can, if you're in America and you want to watch it, if you get a membership to the Criterion Collection, you can watch the restored version, which is really, really good.
Okay, Bill. Well, at your convenience, you just need to shout "time stop."
To be or not to be, that time stop.